on, guys? Welcome back. Another Chit Chat series. We have the whole crew in the house. What's going on, boys? How are we doing this week?
No complaints, man. All gravy.
Come on, where's Antonio's excitement, in high?
I know, dude. I'm waiting for him to yell.
What's happening? How's everybody doing?
I'm sad because you don't get to dance when I get to dance. I tag you on Dancing Dietitian, you never tag back, but you go on TikTok and you just become this whole new persona. So I'm sad that you don't dance with us. You leave us to our own devices to dance by ourselves.
People want to dance with you, dude.
I'm rediscovering kind of my myself and finding ways that I can express myself. So yeah, maybe I need to do a little more dancing all across my platform. So.
And my wife today, she's like, "Oh, I wish we all had an hour to chit chat during lunch." And I was like, "Well, here we are chit chatting." So gotta stay quiet.
We gotta educate. That's what we do. Well, happy to have you guys back. This morning I took a scoop of pre-workout, so we can probably talk about
let's go.
But
that's why he has energy.
But I didn't work out. that's the key.
Hey, I've done that.
But we get this question all the time, and I think we all have different perspectives on this, which is, what should we eat around our workouts pre-post. So I figure we can kind of dive deep into this topic. I did have some questions this morning. I posted them on Instagram, and I got a couple questions in here from people that asked a few things about it. But at the same time, I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on this. We do have a lot of, you guys with backgrounds in sports nutrition. So I think this is also something that we can kind of hear it from that perspective. So who wants to start this show?
Could I ask what's the weirdest pre-workout you've taken, the weirdest name that you can remember? Because there's so many out there, right, with so many different names. And then also, the weirdest reason you've taken a pre-workout. So Andres just said he took some this morning for no reason besides to get energy, right?
To get energy to really be focused, and he worked. But we'll talk about that. It's not something I would recommend. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about, I think we should definitely kind of cover some, ingredients in some of the pre-workout supplements. But I don't remember the craziest things I've ever taken. I know that I've taken the, what's the name of that very famous one?
C4?
Now it's NSF certified.
C4.
Yeah, C4 is one.
And that's a great thing when you talk about pre-workouts. It's always oh, do you remember when it first came out? It had that huge rush, but now they've watered it down. It sucks, bro. That's the way it always goes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I used to do Jacked. Yeah, Jacked was one of my
Jack 3D.
Before it got completely banned.
Yes.
I used to take that all the time in college, and I would most of the time take it to study and stuff. So
we were taking powder meth without knowing it.
Yeah. There was one I was taking called Bull Knox, and it was a test booster plus pre-workout. It tasted fantastic, but when I was in college, I spent all day studying. And one day my boys were like, yo, let's go out. I mixed pre-workout with vodka. Tasted disgusting and definitely helped me black out quickly because an upper and a downer at the same time. Woo, buddy. That was an experience, tell you that much. So that's the weirdest.
That was a brownout, man.
Nate, you haven't taken pre-workout, bro?
No, the Jack 3D was probably one. I did a Four Loko one time. That was a fun experience. Almost yacked all over the school gym, but it was one of those just one of those college moments. You think you're hardcore parkour, and you're just you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do.
Wait, are you talking about
alcohol.
A Four Loko the drink?
The drink.
Yeah, the tall boy, the.
Are you talking about when Gars came?
No.
Okay.
That was a Bud Light. That was
yeah.
a Bud Light.
Yeah.
Wait, did you say hardcore parkour?
Hardcore parkour.
Well, speaking of Four Locos, this is probably gonna be an R-rated. I'm gonna have to add the little R-rated.
Explicit, yeah.
There was a time I think I took a Four Locos. For people listening to this, don't take it. Don't
do this.
Don't do this. Disclaimer.
Four Locos is an energy drink with alcohol in it. So that's the short of it. So we
so
took
dangerous.
We took two of them one night, and I'm just gonna say this. I'm gonna end this right now by just saying I woke up outside of a hotel room, sleeping on the on the hallway, and I got woken up by the head coach of a football team that I was working with at the time saying, you need to go to your room. So
This is the best episode ever. We can end it right here. I think this is gold.
people will be like, Andres, like I thought you were a dietitian and you didn't do that kind of stuff. Yeah, man. Those are funny stories. But that's what we do is chit chat, so people can kind of like see the real us. So
early 20s was reckless, man.
Yeah, that was last
weekend.
weekend.
Reckless.
Yeah, that was last weekend. No, I'm just
That was this morning. That's why I needed that energy.
No, but so yeah, so I guess like, you know, now on that note, let's talk about why people choose to take pre-workouts, and we can maybe even start from like the supplement standpoint and then just move over to what's it called, like the actual nutritional piece of it, and not necessarily supplements, but how can we actually create good nutritional strategies pre, post, and during workouts, depending on the situation. So why do people usually go for pre-workout supplements, and what's in them? Who wants to take this?
TC, get after it, dude.
Well, we always say for the pump, bro. You want to feel good. You want to get that energy. You want to get that one more rep. I think there was a pre-workout called 1MR.
Yes.
One more rep. I love how we all know. We're like, we don't really know that much. Oh, you mean this one? Oh, what about the? And then like bucked up.
This is
another
triggering
one.
a bunch of PTSD.
Yeah.
Now. I got it.
Yeah, for real.
You guys want to go lift while we do this? Because I'm feeling it right now. So typically we see like caffeine. We see the beta alanine, which is what gives you that tingly feeling, which people either love or hate. I was working with an athlete when I was at the Blue Jays, and he only spoke Spanish, and the American strength coach made him take 2 scoops of a pre-workout with beta alanine, and he had never taken pre-workouts. He came to me like jittery, like, I'm having allergies, all this in Spanish, like, what did this guy give me? Fuck this guy. What is his problem? Why would he make me feel this way? And I'm like, dude, what did you take? And he tells me it's the pre-workout. I'm like, dude, it's the beta alanine, and unfortunately there's nothing we can do. He thought he had a food allergy attack, that he ate something that made him do this, but the tingly feelings, I'm like, it is the beta alanine, unfortunately. So sometimes we see creatine, but caffeine, beta alanine are like the 2 biggest ones you typically see in a pre-workout. And then we see a lot of other banned substances that can mess up with your hormones. And we spoke about on the last one. That's why you want to get like an NSF for sport or informed choice.
Okay.
Workout.
So technically, like, and I think it's pretty safe to say that people take pre-workouts because of the energy like boost that they experience, and then they kind of like feeling of, I want to say rage. Well, some people get a little rage in them, but it's more of like that kind of pump and like, oh, let's do this type of thing. And it's a stimulant, and caffeine, it's usually the responsible for that. And we've seen, and we know caffeine, you know, my thoughts on caffeine is that can actually be used effectively as a way to enhance performance. And there's really good research to support that. There's obviously some controversial research that does not, because obviously it comes with its own set of cons as well, which include, but are not limited to, you know, like crashing after, and obviously develop a tolerance for it and wanting to eat more and more and more. But most of the ingredients in a pre-workout, really what you're getting or you're really looking to have is going to be that kind of stimulant. So you're like have more energy and you can crush those workouts. Now, what are your perspectives on this, and whether or not we should incorporate that? Is it something that we should do, or is caffeine something that we can kind of add to our aid, or not necessarily?
I think you can add it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I was going to say, like, I think overall we're looking at it behaviorally too, and then helping to educate the person that's taking it about the role, in this case, of caffeine and the role of sleep hygiene. You know, TC, you and I have talked about this plenty of times working with athletes, and then now the general public. I think overall the place that we need to be as dietitians and as coaches is to educate them on why they're doing what they're doing, and then allow them to make the mistake or to utilize it in a way that really helps them.
Yeah. I mean, we always say you can't out-supplement a bad diet. So saying that you can take it, you definitely can. But what are you eating before? So we're going to talk about fasting later. But if you can eat something before to get that better pump or a better workout, like how many times have clients come to us and said, man, my workout is so much better because I ate something before workout. I know personally, I used to never eat before workout, and pre-workouts were my crux, like my crutch. Like if I didn't have a pre-workout, I wouldn't even go work out. Like I associated, if I didn't have pre-workout, I'm not working out. Like if I ran out, not doing it, not going the next day, just going to wait to go buy more until I go, because I wouldn't feel the same pump or the same energy. But, you know, food is fuel. And if you have proper diet, the pre-workout can give you an extra edge. But if you have a shitty diet, you have a shitty edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good way to put it.
Yeah. And I would just kind of like bounce off of that is, this is something that I've helped several clients do. And this is kind of a philosophy that Tony and I share, is that like, you don't need it to be successful. It's not something that like we have in our list of things of like, oh, good diet check, hydration check. Are you doing pre-workout check? Like, and we've had clients that have actually decreased exponentially the amount of supplements they've been taking. They're no longer on pre-workouts. They're no longer having to do these extra things to get that edge, as we try to call it. But ultimately just looking at their food intake overall and looking at what they're doing, looking at sleep quality as well. Like, these are all factors that play into whether or not you technically need a pre-workout. But then at the same token, you do have the people that just want that extra little boost. But I always tell people, like, do you need a pre-workout? Absolutely not. Can you get the same effect of a pre-workout by focusing on your diet and other behaviors? Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it really depends on again, the goal of the person too, which I guess like we can kind of dive. I like to kind of save some of the conversation for like ingredients in the pre-workout supplements towards the end, because I like to definitely focus on the nutritional piece. So what are some of the criteria that we look into when we're selecting like a pre-workout strategy? So let's just start off with the before. Right. So like, and I guess like we can definitely, this is all going to be very dependent on the type of exercise that people do, the duration and the intensity of it as well. So what are some of like the criteria that you would want to know from somebody? Because I'm sure people listening to this, like they may have different kind of situations, and we'll talk about timing in a minute, but what is the sort of the criteria that you look to, or like the type of questions you ask your clients or people when they ask you, well, what should I take pre-workout? Tony.
What are you eating before? That's the first thing I ask. Or like, what are you doing before your workout? What time of day is your workout? Right? Because if it's later on in the day and they take a pre-workout, that's going to mess up their sleep. Are they doing early in the morning? How's that affecting their crashes? What are they doing recovery wise? Like, there's so many questions I ask, and those are just like the tip of the iceberg, right? So my first question is, what time are you working out? And then what are you eating before? That's like two main questions I like to ask personally before even talking about pre-workouts. Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that question too is what style of exercise are you about to do? Mm-hmm. Someone who is endurance training compared to someone who is strength training or power training, there's some different things that I would recommend based off of that. So I think those three questions, just kind of piggybacking on Tony, are things that I would definitely ask.
What about you, Andres? What do you ask?
Well, I was just like looking at the answers, because I asked a question like, what do you usually eat prior to? Like, for some people would say, well, sometimes I do have a lot of clients that train at 6 a.m. in the morning, and sometimes like, waking up super early may be a little bit difficult for them to kind of have like a full meal or at least like a pre-workout meal. And sometimes like they just don't feel comfortable doing it. So the first question is like okay, what time is it that you're training? A second question is, what type of training are you doing? There's people that may just go on like, they just like to run. So they just do like a mile run every morning. So let's say somebody that is just starting to work out, they may not get this like huge, like, massive, like stimulus from a training standpoint. So their pre-workout strategy may be a little bit different than somebody that is like about to go into like a full hour resistance training workout that is going to be pretty heavy, for example. So that's another thing too. It's like understanding what kind of workout are you going to do. I work with a lot of CrossFit athletes. So it's the thing with CrossFit is like there's a lot of variety. So every single day there could be a super high stimulus workout that is lasting 35 minutes, like literally from the beginning to end. Well, there's another workout that may be only 7 minutes long. And I do think the strategy for pre-workout could be very dependent on those things as well. So it could be adjusted on a daily basis. So that's the second thing the third thing I would want to know. And lastly, what is the goal of the person? Because even though I always like support eating something before a workout, like I also want to know like, okay, what is like the overall goal here? Is it fat loss the goal? And I'm not saying that I support fasted cardio or fasted workouts. We can talk about those things, but it's the overall like intake that person is having throughout the day. So I do also always recommend to make sure that food is surrounding workouts, because I do think that that's when people's they're most insulin sensitive. So this is a time that their carbohydrates are being utilized to the best way possible, because again, like your muscles are just more, I'm just gonna call it more spongy, so they're absorbing some of those carbohydrates. And definitely that's a time, for example, when I say, about 50% of your carbohydrates needs, I teach macro accounting, so that 50% of your carbohydrate needs to be surrounding that workout. And a good time to kind of have it would be prior to or right after. Now, when we're establishing the before, well, I just always would like to also ask you guys, like, okay, now that having that information, maybe we can create sort of a case study. So let's say, for example, we have somebody that, let's just say, start off with somebody that trains in the afternoon, like many people do. So let's say somebody is like right after work, so 4:35, and they're about to go to the gym. We're in Florida, I think at least some of us, and gyms are now opening up because after the coronavirus. So I'm sure
same thing in Arizona.
Yeah, so they're about to start to go back into gym. So let's just pretend that everything kind of goes back to quote unquote normal. What would be, like, somebody that is doing resistance training, working out and lifting weights? What would be the ideal? So maybe you can talk about practical stuff here, like the ideal pre-workout you would recommend for somebody who wants to go first.
I'll definitely make sure that there's carbohydrates in that pre-workout. Definitely something that. So I usually recommend some type of, depending on how long or in terms of when they're going to work out, but usually something that has a little bit more fiber in it. So something that's going to help kind of sustain their energy throughout their workout. They're not going to have crashes kind of in the middle. So a great pre-work. So that's from the carb standpoint. Then wanting to get some type of protein source in there as well. So that way we have those amino acids available for the body to utilize. And so some common ones, like off the top of my head, that I usually think of is like Greek yogurt with some type of fruit. So something that's going to be quick, and the protein also helping with the satiety as well. But something that's going to be quick and easy for them to digest and to get in. But those are kind of the two main things that I usually try to make sure that are in the food aspect of the pre-workout meal or routine, whatever that looks like. So without even getting into supplementation, that's usually what I recommend.
Okay. Dezi?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same exact thing as Nate. The other thing that I like to tackle too, it's pre-workout and it's pre-fueling, but in Arizona, it's how to sell it just like it is in Florida. So, I have people navigating, sprinkling a little bit of salt on fruit if they are working outside, or even a CrossFit workout or something like that, where they're going to be sweating a lot. And that's just for me regionally and things that I like to do with, whether it's an athlete or someone who is, someone who is working out and trying to, expand on their training stimulus.
Hydrate or dihydrate.
Hydrate or dihydrate.
So to ask Andres, when you're saying a pre-workout, how much time before are we saying? Are we saying like immediately before? Are we saying 3 hours before? Just to clarify that question before I answer.
Well, we can break it down into depending on the duration. So again, like, this is like, we're just going to talk about, like, well, most people listening to this podcast is going to be somebody that works in a typical office setting. We may have some, like, some elite athletes, and that may be a different story, but just mostly people that are working in an office setting, or working from home, and they're just about to hit the gym at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So what is like the typical strategy you would recommend from them, from like, maybe from like the after lunch? Let's just kind of say it that way. Did you a person that try to push it, for example, like a mid-afternoon snack and something right before, like 15 minutes before, if they're about to do like a resistance training workout? Or you're more like, the snack mid-afternoon could represent sort of like your pre-workout sort of fuel at that moment?
For me, it depends how the person is, because some people get really hungry before workout, and some people, as you know, we've all worked with these people that can't have anything before workout. Like, their stomach is that, when they have too much water, that sloshy feeling is the one thing that always comes in my mind, right? Or if they have something in their stomach, it just bounces the whole time as they're working out. So 3 to 4 hours before, just like what they said, some sort of carbohydrate and protein. And then I like to do like 30 minutes to 15 minutes before, something fast acting. So it could be a piece of fruit, could be a piece of toast, or granola. So the Nature Valley bars are like a big one I love. They get everywhere, but they are quite delicious. And I'm
everywhere,
yeah. Dude. Like, you buy just like, But that I like to,
Shit.
yeah.
One thing to also say on that, Tony, is like, I think this is something that I do with my clients is we give a recommendation, but I always tell them like trial and error it. Like do it one time, let's say an hour before your workout, see what happens. If you kind of have that sloshy feeling, well, then maybe you need to push it out a little bit further. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like, just everybody listening to this, like, you know, we're giving out times and we're saying this, but ultimately you have to trial and error this on your own. And see what works for you. Because I know some people that can eat 30 minutes before a workout and they can crush their workout without having any type of effects or issues. Other people, they yak halfway through their workout. So it really just depends on what you can tolerate also.
I mean, yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, because I also wanted to ask you guys is like your opinion on, like, as I mentioned when Nate was like talking originally, I said something about like the types of carbs. So not all carbs are created equal. So my understanding and the way that I like to kind of recommend it for my clients, because obviously carbohydrates, there's obviously what we have our complex options, which are going to be the ones that are higher in fiber. We also have our simple options or our simple carbs, which are going to be lower in fiber. But even so, there's even more differentiations. For example, high fructose carbohydrates, which are going to be mostly like fruit options. And then there's also going to be more like sucrose, like rich, options, which are going to be more like your high sugary items that may have more of a insulinogenic response. So obviously, essentially elevating your blood sugar a little bit more. And there's like this concept of like crashing or like, or sugar crashing or whatever, like that may also kind of play into this. So I think a lot of you guys also mentioned like fruit to be used before. I also recommend the same thing, mainly because of that fructose may not have that massive like high blood sugar, like high response. It's going to be because it does have a little bit of fiber as well, but it's not super slow digesting, like for example, like oatmeal, to kind of put that into perspective. So what are your thoughts on this? And is there like a reason why you would recommend, for example, something higher fructose? And do you recommend something very high sugar? Like, again, let's say, for example, I don't know, like a sports drink, which I guess that's a little bit more complicated since it's like multiple transportable carbs, but maybe something like, I don't know, like Skittles or like something super high sugar, but it's just purely more
like honey sticks or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. What would make you decide to go one versus the other?
I mean, I would differentiate between the two, because if I'm serving the clientele that I have now, like we're focusing on foods. So like something that's high fructose or fruits or something like that. Whereas if I'm navigating something with an elite level athlete, then the honey sticks and some of the other things might come into the picture during performance. So for me at least, there's a differentiation between the two and how I would navigate that.
I like to go what Dezi says and that, and also what is the person like? So, for example, I was able to tell someone that they can have gummy bears and their face lit up. They were like, what? You're telling me I can have gummy bears pre and post workout? I'm like, yeah, man, if you love gummy bears, that's what you're going to do, right? So what do they like? What do they enjoy? Because at the end of the day, that's what they're going to be compliant with. We can give them all the science, and if they really want to, and they're that next level athlete that really wants to hone in their performance, then yeah, we can suggest some things like the low sugar sports drinks, depending on the level of their activity, to get them electrolytes and carbs. But if it's someone who's just more everyday, I mean, that's a great way to add in some carbs, right? Like gummy bears makes them happy, right? Or Skittles, whatever that looks like, whatever they can tolerate.
But strictly from the performance standpoint, let's say, like, again, they want to get the best out of their workout. Like if it was not a thing of like, I'll do whatever you think is best for me, what would be your recommendation? Like, would you say gummy bears would be something that would have like as a pre-workout? Again, like putting aside the I love gummy bears type of thing, but more of okay, what is like the best that is going to represent the most the best performance benefit? And I'll give you my example. Like I love to have fruit before my training. I do think actually makes me feel pretty good. I do think I train. I feel like I swear by apples, and for me, apples, I feel like they're a great pre-workout for me. I don't necessarily do it right 5 minutes before, but I do it a little bit more before, but like, I guess like more like 45 minutes or so, 30 minutes before. But strictly from the performance standpoint, what would be your suggestion?
Same, fruit. I would
Yeah.
100% be on the side of fruit because it's offering hydration, it's offering some of the things from the standpoint of recovery before your workout. So mine would definitely be fruit.
Yeah, and that's what we were doing at UF. I mean, that's what all the athletes had at their fueling stations was fruit for that pre-workout. They had applesauce, they had mandarin oranges, I mean, apples, bananas, all that type of stuff. So that would probably be my go-to as well.
Perfect. Tony, anything else?
Agreed. No, I do dried mangoes right now. That is like my fire right now.
Good. That's a good one. What about protein? So I know, Nate, you talked about this, and this is a pretty controversial topic within performance and whether or not we should have protein prior to training. I do agree that increases amino acid availability, which for people listening in, they're like, what the heck is an amino acid? It's like the building blocks of, or like the links of a chain that makes a protein, and proteins are the building blocks of the body. So do we recommend, or again, back to this case study, somebody that is training at nighttime, do we recommend a high protein source? And I'm going to give you guys a couple ways that we can do this. Let's say somebody that is meeting protein needs on a daily basis, like they're having good amounts of protein for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And maybe somebody that is not aware whether or not he's having it or not. So what is the typical, I know you mentioned, Nate, like Greek yogurt is a good way. I think for me, depends on the person because some people don't do necessarily well with like lactose, foods and things like that because they may kind of mess up with their stomach. Do you typically, again, like from the performance standpoint, how to get the best workout and how to get the best recovery, would you recommend a protein-rich source pre-training, whether it's like 3 hours or 2 hours before, or whether it's like immediately before?
So I think in terms of timing, I think the closer to the workout, I don't think there necessarily is a need for a high protein. But if it's 3 hours before, and let's say that's lunch or that's a snack, one thing that we do promote for snacks and lunch is having adequate protein sources. So that way we can keep that muscle building switch turned on. So in terms of, I think it goes back to that timing. It's like, if we're doing this like closer to a workout, I would say that a high protein snack or pre-workout may not be as necessary or beneficial compared to like the importance of carbs in that point. Like I would rather somebody get carbs in than focusing on like high protein at that time. But if it's a meal that is your pre-workout fuel that you're having, then I would say then that needs to kind of still be in line with, a lean plate or whatever type of strategy you're following, whether it's macro based, plate building, stuff like that.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo everything that Nate said. I work off of the same windows. Something that'll help a lot of people that I'm working with navigate is to say like 0 to 60 minutes before that workout, let's concentrate more on carbs. And then when it gets to that 3-hour window, let's concentrate on adding protein. The other thing too, when looking at protein availability, like I really try to tackle what the whole day looks like versus just being hyper focused on, well, what do I eat pre-workout? Like, again, going back to what Tony said earlier, what has your whole day been like? And let's make sure we emphasize the whole day because your results are going to be made in the recovery process. And so that's something that I always try to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Let's move on to post, because I think we have I think for just to summarize the pre-workout, I think we all agreed that a fruit choice is an ideal kind of fuel that you can definitely do pre-workout, not necessarily inclusion of protein, but you have to look at the bigger picture on a daily basis just to make sure you have enough protein availability, and hydration, which we didn't really touch much on this, but it definitely is something that we have to really prioritize as well. Now, after, most people, like, guys, you would ask, like, what should you do post-workout? And they're all going to tell you a protein shake. So what is your thought on this? And I have been into, like, we recently went to a conference and there's like a lot of schools of thought on this. People say that, when you look at, what's his name? I forgot the name of this researcher, that he talks about that meal timing is not important, and protein, you don't have to have it within a specific window after training. And then you have other researchers and other people that say that that's definitely important, because again, you need to kind of have that switch on after a training session, specifically to that case study that I mentioned. Let's say somebody doing resistance training or training with weights. So what is like your typical recommendation again, this is, varies person by person, but what would you normally recommend somebody, or your school of thought as far as like post-workout recovery, and what is it that typical post-workout recovery would include?
Carbs and proteins. I think the conference you're talking about, are you talking about Bill Campbell that we went to at Fancy?
Yeah, I think it was him. No, it was like,
I didn't go to that one.
No, but it was somebody. No, I think it was Bill Campbell. Like, I think it was what's his name?
That
like
he has a video.
He has a website called like Look Good Naked. What's his name? Yeah, but he's a pretty like famous researcher. His name is forgot what his name is. But
well, anyways, he was talking about that anabolic window and how people make jokes about it, that if you don't eat immediately after, you're going to lose out on your gains. And what his research was showing is that if you eat a protein-rich meal before, that you don't need to worry as much about recovery. However, at the end of that talk he was giving, my favorite is, but I still give them a protein shake post-workout.
Brad Schofield.
Oh, Schofield. Brad Schofield.
Schofield. Yeah.
Yeah. Brad.
I don't even know how to say his name.
Yeah, that's him.
Did you say Brax?
Brad.
What up, Brad? Yeah, and he said post-workout, I still give my athletes a post-workout shake. So that includes carbs and proteins, because he's like, I want to cover my ass, because they might have said they ate something 2 hours before or 3 hours before, and they might have thought it was protein rich, but it might not have been enough to keep that muscle building switch on. So in order to cover your ass, I would highly suggest post-workout something with protein and carbohydrates.
What's a go-to for you, or something I recommend? Because I love chocolate milk, and we talked about this in the past.
So good.
Low-fat chocolate milk, tart cherry juice with protein powder, or if you're just doing tart cherry juice, you can do
with the vanilla is amazing.
Really?
Yes.
I never tried that, because tart cherry juice is like, it tastes like it. I just think it's like tart ass juice. Like I don't like it. Like,
you heard it here, folks. Tart cherry juice is now the new tart ass juice.
Andres, when's the last time you had ass juice?
This is, I don't know how this conversation got to this point, but it just tastes awful. Let's just put it that way. But I that's a good idea. I've never even thought about that. But why tart cherry juice?
Good. I've mixed it with chocolate, and it's like a chocolate covered cherry. But I also do a vanilla.
Okay.
So a lot of research shows that tart cherry juice helps with not only hydration, but also with muscle soreness and inflammation. And if you have the case study we're talking about, the athlete that works out in the afternoon, it also helps produce melatonin, which will help them go to sleep. So It kind of helps off a lot of things, right? And it also is high in carbohydrates, so it does everything we want. The only thing it's missing is protein. There are some companies now that are putting protein in it, but I would just suggest doing your own whey protein powder into it instead of what they send, because it's just not enough.
Yeah, to piggyback off of this too, what I've really enjoyed seeing my clients do, and it's cool, we'll teach them all the performance nutrition things that they need from the standpoint of like, hey, as you're tracking, what does 15 to 25 grams of protein look like, per meal type of thing. So even just post, it's really cool to see them navigate that and start to make their own decisions based off of some of the education that they're getting from their own individual assessment. So, I mean, that's been probably the coolest thing that I've seen. That's been really helpful for a lot of people that I'm working with.
Nice. Now, not all proteins are created equal either. So this is something that people would ask, like, okay, what do we do, a meal? Or do we wait until we get home? Because this is a couple of things that I've seen with some people that do protein shakes or like something like that post-workout. Let's say they train at 6 and they finish their workout at 7:30, and then they have that, then they're not hungry, and then sometimes they may end up skipping their dinner because they just don't feel hungry. Then it just kind of turns into a cycle. The next morning they wake up ravishing, and like, so that I've seen that happening before. In my case, I can definitely have that and still have pretty good hunger levels to be able to have crush a good meal. Like, do we push, or depending on the timing for that specific person and that example we just gave, should we, like, can an actual meal replace a recovery strategy of a whey protein plus a tart cherry juice or a chocolate milk? Or it may not be the most, recommended option, in your opinion?
So I think in terms of like a meal, let's say, so one of the things that we also talk about with post-workout strategies is making sure that your post-workout or what you're having after is not high in fat and fiber because of the slowing rate of digestion. So I still, if someone wants to have a meal after, great, perfect, have a meal. But this is a great time to see how those carbs that aren't high in fiber, that are deemed bad by society, how they actually can now have a role with our recovery process. And so, if it's a meal for somebody, great. If it's a protein shake for somebody because it's easier for them, that's great as well. But I think that point of noticing, like, we don't want to aim for high fat and high fiber after workout because we're trying to get those nutrients to the muscles as fast as possible. That's where kind of like I would do the coaching in terms of, regardless if it's a meal or if it's right after, that's what we kind of want to focus on.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Like my go-to is like whey protein and a Pop-Tart. I'm a big Pop-Tart fan.
Love that.
So it's like, you combine like the carbs and you combine obviously the protein, obviously you get the best of both. And I think that's a pretty good strategy. So yeah, I love the point that you made about like protein digestibility and quick, the velocity of absorption. And I think that's the main reason also that we may recommend like a chocolate milk because, well, and Tony and I know this because we were taught by the same person, but the 3 R's of recovery, refuel, repair, and rehydrate. Right? Rehydrate.
Dude, I almost ended this call.
Wait, why do we keep missing the rest?
Well, I guess like the 4 R's. But so those are like the 3 R's that, like repair, you repair with a good source of protein, and then you refuel with a good amount of carbohydrates and then I guess like another question we haven't answered, it's like why we need to have carbs post training if we already are done with it. So, and I think that's something else that we haven't answered. But again, just to finish this thought, refuel with the carbohydrates and rehydrate with fluids and electrolytes. Depending, again, electrolytes will depend on the intensity and the type of training, but still always important. But just to kind of stop and make a parenthesis in here, why do we need to have carbs after a training session? Not all at once.
Yeah.
No. Get him, bro.
Tony.
Hey. Same
What's
mentor
up?
Guy. So refuel. I just spoke about this recently. So the way I like to explain is I want you to imagine, first, carbs are energy, right? So carbs are only stored in 2 places in your body. Fats, they can be stored everywhere. So carbs are only stored in your muscles and in your liver. So I want you to imagine you have 2 fridges. You have one in your house and you have one that's a mile away. Okay? You come home after a crazy workout and you are starving. So you go to the fridge in your house, right? You empty it out. You're like, all right, I'll do groceries tomorrow. Well, you go and do a workout and you come home to that fridge and there is no groceries. So you have to walk a mile to the fridge that you have in your backyard to get more fuel. So that's hindering your recovery, right? Because you have an empty fridge in your house or an empty muscle, because the fridge in your house is your muscle. The fridge that's a mile away is your liver. So when you're hungry, trying to refuel, you need to use the energy that's in the muscle, right? Because if not, you have to go all the way to your liver, and that's just a whole bunch of that's going to take too much work for your body. If you could just refuel it for the workout the next day, so have energy to get through that workout.
So it's basically to replenish glycogen storage, which is like the form in which carbs are stored in muscle mass.
Yep.
Okay, good. Anybody else want to add?
Better.
Thanks
I
for
like
making
that. I like that fridge analogy.
Thank you.
So did I. I'm gonna steal that for sure.
Man, if y'all steal that, trademark.
TM.
That's awesome. So why chocolate milk then? We didn't talk about this. Well, I mentioned it, but so I guess like back to the conversation about the 3 R's. I think chocolate milk is something that covers all bases. So it does have the protein, it does have the carbohydrates because of like the lactose, and sometimes they add a little bit of sugar to that. So obviously, definitely helps with the velocity of absorption, and it does have fluids. And the add-on of chocolate milk is the fact that it also have electrolytes, including potassium. So definitely, it's kind of like a hitting all the nails on, as far as that, and checking all the boxes. So definitely is definitely a good idea to incorporate. Now, this also leads to another question. I just had somebody ask it on the on Instagram today, which is how many grams of protein, or is there a specific need that we need to have as far as like how much protein we need to have post training? Because a cup of milk or a cup of chocolate milk would have closer to like 8 grams of protein, correct? So give it or take, depending what you choose. Fairlife is going to have 12. But what is is there a specific need for protein post training, and how much is that? Is there like a grams per pound type of thing, grams per kilogram that you guys use? Again, like when you're doing your own kind of like, estimations for your clients and teaching them about this stuff, or is there like a specific number that you try to kind of hit, based on research and based on what you guys have seen?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this earlier. I like to help them navigate that 15 to 25 gram threshold and teaching them how to execute that. Surprisingly, too, I don't have a whole lot of people that I work with that love chocolate milk, which is crazy as I'm thinking about it. Even myself, my daughter loves it, but I'm not too high on it.
Nice.
Really? You don't like chocolate milk? Do you like strawberry milk?
Oh, dude, strawberry milk is my jam.
Okay,
I used to have a banana milk too. That was gangster. They don't have that anymore.
So what do you recommend? How many do you recommend, grams or no?
Yeah, you talking about the 15 to 25? Yeah.
15 to 25 is what you do?
Yeah, grams.
I think it depends on the person and their size, right? I'm sure you say the same thing, but I like to shoot for at least 20. Yeah.
Yeah, 20 grams. I think it's like what research supports, that it's like, and not to get too technical in this conversation, but like leucine is one of those like amino acids that, I usually tell people that it's like the one that orchestrates everything that happens at, the level of muscle mass. It's kind of like the one that says like, yeah, we need to obviously start building new muscle fibers or not. And the best way to activate it is to make sure that you're having at least 20 grams of protein. But for larger individuals and the amount of muscle mass that you may have, you may need to go up higher than that. So sometimes can have to go up to like 30 and 40 grams or so. So that's kind of like the main thing. So here's another question for you guys. Like, what about, is there such thing as like too much protein? Like for people that are doing like, let's take an average person, again, resistance training, but they're actually pushing 2 scoops of protein after training. So they're essentially getting closer to like 50 to 60. Is more better for, let's say, muscle gaining or even increasing lean muscle mass, or even for recovery purposes?
At least they know they're getting enough protein. So that's the first, I guess that's a positive out of that, right? Yeah. But I don't think it's necessary to load it with that much, right? Just spread it out throughout your day so you can enjoy more meals. I don't think from what I understand with the research, you don't need that much protein. So you're kind of overdoing it in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do agree. I just really tell people, like, if you have like unlimited amount of money to spend on whey protein supplements, I was like, first of all, you may get, depending on the quality of the protein supplements, you may get very gassy. And I don't think your spouse or partner would appreciate that.
Yeah.
And number 2, you're spending, money that is not necessarily, like, well, you don't really need to be getting to, like, and I usually tell a lot of my clients, like, don't rely so much on protein supplements to fill your needs. Look at it as a supplement. It's, try to get most of your protein needs from food sources, and then whatever you need to fill in the gaps, like, maybe add it with like maybe a scoop of protein or so. And I think that's, a pretty good strategy as far as that. So.
And it's funny you mentioned whey protein, because I remember when I was younger, before I got into nutrition, I went to a store once because some bro at the gym's like, you should take casein post-workout. And I did it, but now I know casein is something you should definitely not be taking post-workout.
Why?
You want the whey, because it's slow digesting. We want the whey that's more fast digesting.
Good. Okay, there you go.
Thank you for checking me. I
was
scared for a minute. I was like, dang. He's like,
well,
why?
Not checking you, but there's probably going to be people that are going to be like, they were listening to this, like, but why? So they were just going to, like, curious as far as that. So
people are you, man. Why you got to test me every time, Andres? Come on, bro.
I'm just like,
I saw his butthole close up through his eyes.
I'm just asking the questions that I think the people listening to this podcast right now are probably going to have. So I'm trying to be a smart ass. But good.
I wasn't being a smart ass. I gave you the answer.
You just take care of the listeners, man.
I said I wasn't trying to be a smart ass. That's what I meant. But anyways, okay, let's just kind of settle that like recovery conversation.
Protein farts. We'll end it there.
But the last thing we can talk about, and again, this topic can be so extensive, would be during workouts. Is there such a need as having intra-workout nutrition, like having carbs during, and when do you recommend this and when do you not recommend this?
I feel like for our case study, it wouldn't necessarily be needed for the person that's doing an hour of strength training. It's probably going to be some rest periods in between there. Not needed, but for the marathon, the triathlete that is about to embark on a 2-hour training session, then yeah, I definitely think intra workout nutrition is definitely needed. And so I know past runners that I've worked with, we've used Gatorade as a great kind of intra workout source, that they're not only hydrating, but then they're also getting those benefits of those of the carbohydrates that are found in Gatorade. So yeah, I think that's where I would kind of draw the line, is like if you're someone that's doing CrossFit, you're doing 45 minutes to an hour of strength training. I don't think there's a need if your diet is in line. Obviously, going back to that, but for the person that's doing that extensive training session, that's where I would probably find a need for it.
So I'm currently working with like a power lifter, and I'm having her try intra carbs during her workouts because she has a meet coming up. So I want to make sure she can handle those foods in between and not have any GI issues. Number one, like running to the bathroom, but also getting a performance enhancing effect. And we started her with some of the honey waffles, and then we tried some gummy bears, and she's seen her performance go up. Like she's done PRs this past month that she never thought she could do. Obviously, we worked on other things within her timing, right, nutrition-wise, but for intra-workout, she's doing like 2-hour workouts. So she has the time that she's resting in between because she's powerlifting. She's lifting like 455. She's deadlifting that. And I was like, holy crap, I can't even do that.
Damn.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, she's doing it for 3 sets of 3. And I was just like, boy, if you got
Lightweight, baby.
That's crazy.
So, and then for CrossFitters, for our case study, the only time I would want them to do intra workout is if they have a competition coming up that they're training for, because they're going to get that time in between to see if they can handle it, to give them that performance enhancing. But if it's just like you're going in for one workout, don't do it. Like it's not necessary, at least from what we know.
Yeah, I have a client who's he does elite CrossFit, so he does like do a lot of competition, and he does train like 2 to 3 hours a day. So he has like a strength block, and he has like a metcon block and all that. So that's when we have added a certain amount of carbohydrates during, and it's actually helped tremendously. I know there's a company that does like the super starches. I know like your Generation Yukon, I think we talked about this. I do actually think that they have pretty good products, and not that this is like sponsored or anything like that, but I have definitely used them in the past, and it's really effective because it's a way that you can kind of get a pretty good, not high spike, like blood sugar spiking carbohydrate, and definitely kind of have a good benefit, as far as that. And I've used it with a few of my athletes that are like either endurance or even people that do, again, like extensive long duration workouts as well. But definitely I see the application on strength training and strength workouts as well. That's good. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page as far as that. All right, so we're gonna finish this up with fasted workouts, and we're just gonna kind of change the conversation here. What are some strategies for the the people that work out very early in the morning? Because I'm gonna have this question a lot, which is what happens like if I eat something, even if it's like a banana or like even half a banana or whatever I have in the morning, I just feel like I want to throw up the entire workout. Like I work out typically at 6 or 6:30. What is your recommendation for these people?
I mean, I've been getting up at 4:30. Man up. No. Like I used to be that same person who didn't eat anything before workout. So I started out small, right? Like don't go for the whole banana. Don't go for half a banana. Just have a bite of the banana, a bite of toast, and work up to it. Or like a Nature Valley, just have a bite of a Nature Valley bar, save it for later. And now like I have the dried mango, which I told you guys about. Like I just have like a couple pieces. And that's where I start off at to get used to it, to eat more. Which I don't eat a ton before. So I would eat a slice of bread, maybe a Nature Valley bar before, because I don't want to eat too much just because of my stomach. But I know that you have some great strategies that both you and I know Nate have used. I don't know, Dezi, if you've done a lot with fasted.
No, I was actually interested to see what Andres was going to say about this too. So yeah, go ahead.
So I have a client right now, and I've implemented this myself. I used to train a lot at 6 a.m. I don't really do it as much anymore. I do usually when I do my workouts in the morning, I do them fasted. But one thing that I ensure with a lot of especially because I have a lot of CrossFitters that do the 6 a.m. workouts, and they don't really necessarily feel comfortable having too much in the morning, is it's a concept. I don't like to kind of put a name to it, but they call it carbohydrate backloading, which is essentially increasing the amount of carbohydrates at nighttime. So you're essentially like loading up glycogen storage, not only liver, but also muscle. And that's a good way. So the whole thought process is like, if those are loaded, those are going to be like the main, during sleep, you're not really losing a massive percentage of those storages overnight. So you'll have direct access to those. But again, it's sort of like for somebody that is like never done that before and they like having something in the morning, I don't think it's necessarily recommended. But for somebody that doesn't have anything and they're struggling with energy during their workouts, this is something that I would start. And I would say, you know what, like, let's just try to push like higher carbs like at night. And sometimes they're going to give me the eyes like, wait, I thought that was not recommended because I'm about to go to
gain weight. Don't do it.
Because I'm going to gain weight.
I'm going to get fat.
But I tell him like, well, there's a strategy that we're implementing, and I think this is definitely going to help you. And that's been pretty effective. I usually do that myself, and I think it's definitely helpful as well. So not sure if Nate has a different kind of way that he approaches that.
No, that's the exact same method that I use. I have a lot of clients that don't like eating first thing in the morning. They're doing really early morning workouts. And again, this is just meeting them where they're at, right? So if instead of forcing them to do that, if it has caused them pain before or discomfort, then yeah, definitely backloading it the night before. And it's actually pretty cool when they start implementing that, because they go from, having very depleted workouts, kind of going half-ass on their morning workouts, to feeling energized, right? Like waking up before their alarm clock goes off to get to that workout, and they feel a lot better with their overall performance in their workout. So yeah, that same strategy. I mean, that's exactly what I use.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, the only transition that I would that I have people go through as well that don't like breakfast beforehand is really just taking like a cup of juice, watering it down, and that's some of their hydration as they get to the workout. And that's generally with people who hate breakfast. They're generally amenable to like, okay, yeah, I'll try that. And then they see the benefit of it. And then it becomes a performance and a placebo effect of like, oh, this is working. Let me continue to do this. I mean, that's just probably the only change that I would make to what you guys are saying.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of like finish on this note, as far as like the reasons why some people, like there's people that you do trade like fasted workouts because they feel like they can have something, but there's another reason why people do it, which is like the thought process is, well, if I train fasted, I don't have anything in my stomach, so my body's automatically going to kind of go and search for fat storage or fat storage is going to use, and it's going to increase fat oxidation. And just want to kind of point that out. The research, it shows that if you're just still not creating a calorie deficit on a daily basis, it doesn't matter. You're actually kind of creating a transient, it's like they call it a transient like fat oxidation moment, because at the end of the day, your body's still going to be in a caloric surplus if you're eating too many calories. So that can be effective if you're actually maintaining a calorie deficit. It can have a small effect, but not as much as like the actual maintenance of a calorie deficit overall. And that's been actually shown in research that it's just not really that effective to do a fasted workouts. So people like to do it because they feel good with it. And that's the other piece. Like psychologically, many people think that they're actually feeling that way. And if it is something that makes you feel good, you feel happy with it, then just know the facts, but just do it because it's just more like from a psychological standpoint, you feel better doing it that way. So just want to make sure that I kind of address that. I'm not sure if you guys have anything else to share on that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So I think last thing I have on my list is like the pre-workout supplement ingredients. So some of the, what we can just like finish up like super quickly on what are the ingredients that have good research to support to be added. Let's say somebody has a pretty good nutritional program or has a good nutrition strategy, and they want to get, as I think Antonio mentioned earlier, the edge and have something extra added into the mix. What are your typical ingredients you look for in a pre-workout supplement? So we know, obviously, we want to make sure something is NSF certified or something that has good certifications to support that what's in the bottle, it's exactly what's on what's in the label, it's exactly what's inside the bottle. But besides that, what are some ingredients that have, in your opinion, good research to support, performance benefits or that people can look for?
Caffeine is the first one that comes to mind.
Good.
Caffeine, beta-alanine, creatine are the three I look for when it's like a pre-workout supplement, honestly.
I like also, I think there's like good research that is coming out as L-citrulline. which also has some. It definitely kind of helps from the perspective of beta-alanine. You're not sure if you guys have any thoughts on that.
But I believe it's banned by WADA.
Oh, so for athletes, I guess.
Yeah.
It would be, yeah.
I believe that's one of those that you can't use. I think it's citrulline malate, if I'm not confused, but I mean, you can.
Yeah, it's the same. L-citrulline malate.
Yeah, but I believe it's banned by WADA that they can't use that.
Interesting. I didn't know that. So if you're an athlete, definitely not something that you would implement. Or what about baking soda?
I got baking soda. Baking soda.
I've done it before, actually, but I did it really small. The only thing with baking soda is like, you know, you may go make a trip to the bathroom very rapidly, but technically speaking, according to the research, is the best for like the muscle buffering capacity, like the lactate buffering capacity that it has. Like it's like comparable to none. The problem is like the digestive issues that you're going to have, because the dosages that you need, it's literally going to cost you to have explosive diarrhea for people listening in. So let's just make sure that
Yummy.
Love it. Sign me up.
Also, I forgot like pre-workouts, like beetroot juice,
Beetroot.
extract, right? And then also like collagen. That's when you want to take collagen before a workout, not after, for it to be effective.
Yep.
Now, when we talk about pre-workout, we're talking about energy and then performance enhancing. So the collagen is more like long-term joint health. And then when we're talking like beetroot juice, it actually has been shown to have that opening of the blood vessel, vasodilator, to help the pre-workout get to where it needs to quicker.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Those are some other things. I don't look for it, but if it's in there, awesome. It's like an added bonus. But if I had to choose like 3 or 2, it'd be caffeine and beta-alanine. If you said gun to head, you can only make a pre-workout with 2 supplements, those would be the 2 I would choose.
Yeah. And I think I also like, and sometimes I recommend people like not to like necessarily buy like an already done pre-workout supplement, but just get them separately, unless on the ingredient list, there's like a specific like breakdown of like, okay, this is how much is in there. There are some supplements out there. Like, for example, I know that, Clean doesn't have one, but apparently they may come out with that one. I think
soon.
you mentioned that. But then there's other companies that may have something similar. I do have like I currently what I'm using is one called Legion Athletics. So they do have like the perfect breakdown of, okay, this is how much it's on there. There are some things that I feel like may not be needed, but they has like, okay, the creatine, the beta-alanine, and all that stuff in there as well. So that also may help. But yeah, like I said, just to finish out this part of it, like, you know, don't do a pre-workout if your nutrition is not on point. Focus on fixing your nutrition first, and then use that as an edge provider in the process of, you know, helping you achieve your goals. You guys agree?
Facts.
For sure.
Anything else you guys wanted to add before we close it up for today? This is a long one. This is a long one. That's good.
The only workout we didn't talk about.
45.
Now, what about like pre or post workout? This is the last question I'm going to ask for, like a 2-minute workout where you have a 5-minute warm up.
A 2-minute workout when you have a 5-minute warm up? Oh.
You got me, man. Fuck.
That was good. That was
Damn
good.
It. I hate it.
That was good. All right. Well, on that note,
we'll let that one simmer, folks.
People are going to put in the comments, what does he mean?
We may have to cut out the podcast, like, you know, a little earlier.
Should I eat fruit before?
Why does it smell like pineapple?
All right, folks. That's it for today's episode of Even Nutrition Radio. Hopefully, this was entertaining and also informative to all you guys.
I need a protein shake now, honey.
As usual, please feel free to leave your reviews. Please, let's just pretend you didn't hear that last part. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of Even Nutrition Radio CHIT CHAT series. Have an amazing week.